It's Friday, January 3rd, 2025, and let's talk about tab binding. Tickets. Can we use tickets as tab binding? Well, kinda, sorta, maybe. Let's find out. This is Junk Journal January Challenge, Day 3, and our prompt is tickets. And for our Junk Journal, we chose an accordion fold base for our pages. We're going to modify that a little bit so that we can incorporate a tab binding. That's what we're doing today. Let's start with what you can use for a tab binding. Whenever you're binding a junk journal, you need something pretty flexible unless you're using book covers from another book or you're making book covers with a hard spine. We're not doing that. We're making ours with a flexible spine. So starting at the top, you can use any of the following materials. Decorative trim. The second one is what's called scrim tape, and it's used to go over drywall joints. I use it often when I make, or in fact almost always when I make hard journal bindings. It's flexible, it's strong, and you can cover it because it hardly shows through. The next one is sari silk, and you can iron it if you'd like, or you can leave it crinkly and just let it look the way it comes off the skein. You can also use seam binding, that tape that's kind of folded over and it goes over your seams. Great for junk journals. You can also use denim or any other strong fabric. I would stay away from lace unless you lined it with something. I would stay away from paper only because both of those are not going to stand up to the opening and closing and torque that's going to be on your book. And remember, this is going to be your binding on your left side. Let's say, for argument's sake, you really want to use tickets as a binding method. You can do it, and you can do it by using washi tape, but washi tape doesn't stand up very well to wear and tear in this kind of application. And I just want to remind you that we're going to be putting our binding tabs all along the spine, and washi tape just is not going to stand up to that. But if you really want to use tickets, you think it's a clever idea, I certainly think it's a clever idea, let's figure out how you can do that. Do a Google search for free images tickets, and somewhere along the way you're going to find a page of tickets. And I'm going to challenge you to do something different than just cut them out and try and use them. I do want to point out, I don't know if you can see it in camera, but this page has a watermark on it, and so because of that, you cannot use it in a for sale book. End of disclaimer. So here's my challenge to you, and this, I'm not original to this at all. This actually came from May Made It when she challenged her people to cut down scrapbook papers for inserts and elements that they just didn't know what to do with the page. So we're going to do blind cutting. Now you can cut to the outside of the widest ticket on this particular page, or you can cut so the whole thing is equal, meaning the widest tickets in those rows, the bottoms will be cut off or what have you. It's totally up to you. But for this challenge, all we're doing is cutting off the white borders on all four sides. Next, you're going to flip it over, and you're going to cut 4 strips. And see, I changed the way my paper is oriented. That's because all those strips of tickets are running up and down. So I'm going to make 4 cuts 3/4 of an inch apart, and that will cut my strips apart. You'll see me doing extra fiddling and marking right here. But all you're really after is from the left side, you're going to get 4 strips out of a 4-inch wide piece of paper. So why did I tell you to turn the paper over? Because you're not distracted by, oh, this ticket is bigger than that one, and there's lots of white space and all that jazz. All you care about is getting your binding strips, and if you turn the paper over and aren't distracted by what you see, when you flip those strips over, you have strips that are wide enough for what you need. You can cut them to length without being too fussed about the fact that part of one ticket lands on part of the other strip and all that jazz. It's just an easy way to speed through this. The next thing you're going to do is strengthen these strips with something. So you can paste them onto scrap paper. You're not going to see the underside very much, so it doesn't matter that much. And then coat it on both sides with Mod Podge. That'll give it a little strength and flex. You can cut scrim tape and put that on the back of your paper strips, or any other method you've used in the past to make a cover that is a flexible journal cover. Here's the binding layout. Now, depending on whether you want to attach your covers first or last, that will determine whether your first 2 strips go on your cover or on your first section. And this will make a lot more sense when you see me demonstrate it. So we have 2 strips, 3/4 of an inch wide and 3 inches long. You're going to put the strips on the right side of the front of your cover, your sections, whatever you're binding. And then the next section, you're going to stagger those strips so that they fill in the gaps between the first 2 strips. Because we're only using 4 tabs on this 4-inch high book, we're only having to stagger 1s and 2s. It'll make more sense when you see me do it. Let's start with me making a mistake, because confession is good for the soul, right? So when you make these tab bindings, you're not supposed to put tabs on the last page, and you'll see that I did. Do I care that I made a mistake? Absolutely not. I do not care at all. So let me explain what I'm doing here. You saw in the previous shot that I had my tabs staggered and I had them temporarily taped down. And the reason is I wanted to make sure that my tabs were long enough so that I could have good flex on my tab spine. I'm using a skewer to put a little bit of gap there, a little space. I use the end of my ruler to make sure that everything stayed lined up on that right edge where I'm affixing my tabs. Now, when you do this, you're always using the tab that's underneath the top section, whether it's covers or signatures, or in this case, a modified accordion fold. Wherever you are in the steps, you're going to use the previous tabs from the one underneath. And you can see that mine are not cut properly, meaning I have 2 different sizes. I have 3/4 of an inch, and then I have 2 that are an inch. And I didn't notice that when I was doing the cutting and the pasting for the previous part of this demonstration. So what I'm doing is cutting away the excess. I still want a little bit sticking up on the spine for stability, but I'm just cutting away the excess so I can get the tabs folded up and over. Now, how is it that I came to make this mistake? Well, I am not using the tab binding to trap the covers. I'm going to put 2 fake tabs that will wrap all the way around from the outside cover on the front to the outside cover on the back. And because of that, I should not have, as I said, put tabs on the third section, which is our little accordion fold envelope spine. So what I'm doing here is just compensating for my own mistake and wrapping all 4 tabs. You should only have 2 tabs on each page. But honestly, the reason this happened is because I wasn't going to use the tickets as tabs. I was going to do something else. And I sat here this morning watching the second, the second prompts with my first cup of coffee, trying to wake up, and thought to myself, why am I telling other people they can use the tabs to bind and incorporate it into tickets when I'm going to do something else? That makes no sense. So I made a mistake, but if you look at tab binding, you'll see exactly where I made the mistake if what I've said hasn't made sense. So let's put it aside to dry, and we'll see what happened with the finished binding part of this prompt using tickets. You can kind of see where I made the mistake. Each section should only have 2 tabs instead of the back section having 4 like it does. This was what I was originally going to do, is bind everything with leather, and I can still do that if I leave the rest of the cover construction until the end. I love the way this looks. This saddle colored upholstery patch tape and the craft paper. But honestly, if you saw this book in person, it's getting a little grungy looking from handling, and I don't want that. You saw how I put a spacer in. There's our first simple envelope that we did in preparation, and I'll probably have to fortify that page because it's not doubled over like the rest of them. Here's our envelope pockets from yesterday, and all in all, I am not unhappy thus far. In fact, I'm happier, and that, I think, part of the credit for that goes to Shannon Green, who is also doing make-alongs with us for Junk Journal January 2025. And for reasons that she and I know, even though we are brand new friends, she keeps me giggling and chuckling. And so I just want to acknowledge that and publicly thank her. Now, let's see what the finished, now that we've done a flip through, the finished book insides look like so far. I think it was on Christmas Day that I gave you the little mini tutorial on a book plate and make it into a folio so that you have a place for the prompts by date. So January 1st, whatever. And so I pasted that down to give that fly page a little bit of extra bulk. And I have decided to leave my covers off until the final flip through. And also, now that the project part of construction is over, I get to just sit back and do a prompt a day like everybody else. When you have a YouTube channel, you kind of sometimes fall into the trap of teacher mode and forget to have fun with your own projects. But I think I've come up with a solution for that, and that'll be a little bonus episode, or maybe part of the final flip through. I'm not sure, but surely you will have to wait until week 3 or even week 4 for me to let the cat out of the bag. Thank you so much for stopping by. I appreciate it. These episodes will be much shorter, probably 7 to 10 minutes, and it'll just me with the camera on, gluing and pasting and spilling and making a general mess of things. I hope you'll join me. God bless you. I'll see you real soon.